So let's go into SSURGO QT or SSURGO Query Tool. And this is just this SSURGO, as you see up here, qt.com. It's important to go ahead and to turn off your VPN. Make sure, that if you're with us within RCS that you don't have your VPN on. That might change at some point, but at least for now, that's a pretty important thing. We'll hit OK. So let's go ahead and kind of identify the area that we were looking at a little earlier. Is next to Canada, next to Sault Ste. Marie. It makes it a little bit easier to identify when you have a national border, but there again, I mean, that can be, if you're within your local area, you can find these places real easy. Kind of see that, the lake, the river, the lakes around it. You can kind of identify roughly where it's at. Let's go ahead and zoom in. This is northern lakes and forests. That's where this will be. So you'll go ahead and pull down the ecoregions for northern lakes and forests. That way we can kind of dial in and see what may be most helpful within that place, for practices and things like that. Lakes and forests. And let's go ahead and hone in. Let's go ahead and get real close. Exactly where we're at. You can find this little area. I'm going to zoom out just a tiny bit. We're kind of looking at identifying something in this general vicinity. One thing we can start off with is, seeing the moisture class, just see like how saturated that area is, the soils are within that area. If, you're looking at some of these criteria and you want to find out what they mean because maybe it's something you forgot, or maybe you just want to make sure that you're on the same page, you can go ahead and hit that button and it'll kind of take you to this document. And basically, there's a lot of documents within this SSURGO that you can go ahead and find out more information on. You can scroll down here to find out more about what that means. Here we get into aquatic moisture regime, and it goes into a big long definition. Something I try to do sometimes is I'll download it as a PDF and then I can search words. So maybe if I wanted to go ahead and find every place in this document where aquatic was discussed, then that'd be a good opportunity to go ahead and download that PDF. So that might be helpful to see like what's going on. I think frankly the ones I'm most interested in when I look at the issues there are like soil depth. It can be very interesting and kind of see like, how deep are those soils in this area? It's like, well, they're pretty deep. You can go ahead and keep going like this, and it'll show you that basically everything is kind of greater than 60 inches deep in this area. Okay. So let's go ahead and click those. We'll look at soil characteristics for the flooding, particularly like in June to August, and we can see essentially, how frequently those places flood. Not very frequent. In fact, basically it's none to very rare when you're going to have flooding through there. So they'll kind of maybe limit or guide you, at least within that time frame. Look at hydrologic groups. You can see, of course, there's more information on what that means. You can find out here so it looks like a large percentage of these are actually in the D hydrologic group. If you want to find out what that means, it's nice. You can go ahead and come over here, hydrologic soil groups. You just basically, click that little question mark and it'll kind of tell you roughly what that all means. particularly what that may mean for, practices and things like that. Means there's probably not a load of infiltration going on. You can see some of this criteria. It means anyway. So there's that. There's also slope class. This can help you kind of figure out roughly, what do you have going on within that area? Are these pretty flat soils? And it looks like they are. It looks like they're equal to or less than 2%, a large percentage of that land. And if you've been through that area, you definitely know that it's pretty flat land, but sometimes it's just nice to go ahead and have this graphic so you can kind of see, like, well, if you have some pretty level ground, some of the practices you may focus on may be a little bit different. You have available water content. You can see, like, essentially how much moisture, these soils may be able to retain after they hit field capacity. Looks like they hold on to some pretty good moisture throughout the year. Looks like they're, if you combined both of these, it's a vast majority of soils within that area. Anything over 0.17 is pretty good. It means there's not a lot of sands, or if there is, there's a lot of organic matter to make up for that. We have chemistry characteristics. In that, you can go ahead and see, let's go non-saline. Just kind of see roughly what's going on at these certain depths. Looks like there's not a salinity issue. What I find probably more interesting, especially when it comes to looking at plant materials that you may choose, is you can go down here, and of course, it may not be 100% based off of past activities, but you can see like what the pH is. So let's go 4 to 5. Let's see like what, so, oh, okay, 4 to 5. So, these are pretty low pH soils in through here. If you looked at, planting most anything, frankly, you're going to look at putting on quite a bit of lime. Interesting enough, that's not this area. That looks like that's the priority area with the tool. So let's go ahead and let's do 5 to 6. And let's see what we got. So still pretty low pH between 5 and 6, but it's not as bad as a 4 point something. Let's go, just to be fun, let's see how many how we got. 6 to 7. Okay, you still got, quite a bit of soil. So, of course, there's local conditions and they change all of that, and that's fine. The last thing here that I would look at with these types of characteristics would probably be fragipans. If you're in this area, see how big or small of an issue that is. Looks like typically, if there is such a thing as fragipans, they're more than 25 centimeters deep. So it looks like that's not really an issue here if you're looking at practices to go ahead and plan. So let's go ahead and just to kind of show you what you may be able to find depending on where you're at in the country, I'm going to move to a place that's a little closer to home for me and show you what may be available, particularly if you're in a range area of the country. So let's go up to, let's say, Flint Hills. Get a little bit closer. Find out the type of area you're in. You can kind of pinpoint exactly where you're at. So let's see here. You can go ahead and click on, many of these souls when you bring it up, and then it will, have all this information in here. You can see about, basically what's the soul type name. You can look at, the texture class, a lot of things. So with this, you can go ahead and look up this ecological site description, and you can so New Mexico State University has, many of these on file. It's just something that you can learn a little bit more about, especially if you have state transition models. Some of these things can be kind of interesting. And then you can come in through here and download the full description, and that will kind of tell you some more background of what happens in that site. And, particularly if you're not looking at like a cropped situation, these can be very interesting. If you're looking at like not only range, but, frankly, forestry as well, too, you can see, what kind of factors that you have in the CSD. Many of these will be the same as neighboring ESDs, but there is some differences. You can see a soil profile. That's pretty typical. And then come down to basically the different states. You can see like where you go from a grassland state to a short grass state, to a tillage state, to a woody state. And, under these different types of managements, you'll go from, 1 to 4 if you're tilling it. Lack of fire and brush control. You'll go from 1 to 3, which will be from a grass state to a woody state. Long-term heavy continuous overgrazing with no rest or recovery will take it from, particularly in this area, like a tall grass to a short grass plant community. Introduction of non-natives will take it down to this state, introduced invasive noxious state. And then you can go with prescribed grazing, brush management, and prescribed burning. You can go from 3 to 1. These things can be kind of interesting. So here's like the soil data access. This is one of those links that's right on there. And depending on who you are, especially if you're a partner, there's a lot of good links on here. One of them is the Geospatial Data Gateway. I frankly like it a lot because if you're wanting to go ahead and get some information from some area, some kind of GIS layer from another area that you're not in, you can go ahead and just come in through here, request it, and get whatever shape files that you want, and it will get it to you. Here, and hit this button and install software. For instance, if you don't have ArcGIS, you could look at all the different software you could install that is blessed. You can come in here and let's see, type in Arc, see what it brings up. Let's see here. See all the different ArcGIS desktop. I personally have it already installed, but if you didn't have it installed, and if you're somebody in the agency and you just want to go ahead and have that ArcGIS on your computer so that you can go ahead and communicate maybe with a partner and share some shape files. This is a great way to go ahead and get that installed.